Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Flight School Connector. This one's called Customer Insights. Are you experienced? So let's go ahead and introduce. My name is Chris Moser. I'm the Senior Director of Flight Training Education here at AOPA, and I am really happy today to be joined by my colleague, Michael Hangartner. Hey Michael,
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me back.
as always, and just tell us a little bit about yourself again.
Yeah, I'm the Senior Manager of Curriculum Development in the High School Initiative at AOPA, but in the past I've had a fairly wide variety of business experience as well.
Awesome. And in fact, not only that, but you're being very humble. You've got like multiple degrees and an MBA,
I
correct?
do I
Yes.
do have multiple masters,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah. Let's not brag now. Okay. And of course, behind the scenes, we are happy to have Stephen Schroeder back there, helping us run all the logistics and making everything happen. So say hi, Stephen.
Hello, Stephen.
Hey, good to have you here. All right, so let's get right to it. Actually, the first thing we want to do is thank our sponsor, Sporty's Pilot Shop. And in fact, what they wanted to highlight was they have Sporty's flight training courses, the Flight School Edition. And so if you can see right there on the screen, they've got everything you would need to help run your flight school with a great curriculum, private, instrument, commercial. They've got discounts available for schools, and what they're saying is you can increase retention rates, cut their overhead, boost your revenue. So all really good stuff. They've got lifetime access for students, updates, prep for the knowledge test, and it works on any sort of device, iPad, phone, computer, smart TVs, etc. So check it out. If you'd like additional information, just contact mark.w@sporties.com. So thanks again, Sporties. All right, Michael, the thing that we talked about last time, this is part two in a series that we started on customer insights. And
It
last time we
is.
spoke a little bit about customer value. Just for our viewers out there, can you give us a really quick summary of what we discussed last time?
Yeah, really briefly, we looked at what constitutes value for a business and also how businesses can go about creating value. And not just on a surface level of pointing out the different features or attributes that their product has, but it really drilling down deep and focusing on what customers find the most value in.
Good. And I remember, and in fact, what we'll do is we'll make sure we get that link in the description or in the
Yeah,
links down below
perfect.
this video so you can go check that video out. But the main idea there being if you can either increase the value, the perceived value for the customer,
Right.
or lower their perceived costs, you're going to make a better experience for your customers.
Exactly. Exactly.
Awesome. So today I know we're going to do the next add-on, which is talking about, well, what is a customer experience or what are customer experiences and how to get around that. So tell us a little bit
Right.
more about that.
Yeah, we want to go a bit further down the road of what really constitutes value for a customer. And one thing that a lot of the recent literature focuses on in marketing is the creation of a positive customer experience, because that goes beyond just a specific service or a product. And there are a couple things to remember there. First, well, what is an experience? And an experience, as you can see the definition on the screen, it states conditions or events that consciously affect buying behavior.
Right.
And an important thing to remember is that we all experience things differently, and also that an experience can be more than just the value of the service or the product itself. So, as a good example of that, if you think about coffee, if you go to McDonald's versus Starbucks, McDonald's is going to charge much less for a cup of coffee
Right.
than Starbucks is. But if you compare the two coffees head to head and just look at the product, is there really that much difference? And there's not. I mean, personally, I would probably prefer McDonald's.
He is
But
he is creating a big stir here, as it were. Yeah.
not AOPA's official opinion. But that being said, why is Starbucks able to charge so much more for their coffee? It's because, as we all know, the experience you get within a Starbucks, which goes far beyond the cup of coffee,
Right.
is much different than what you get in McDonald's.
Cool. All right. And so that seems like then maybe now we can talk a little bit about, or you can tell us a little bit more about how can the flight schools potentially leverage that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Well, there's an important lesson here, and that is that you always want to be thinking beyond just what the product or service you're offering is. So if you look at flight schools,
Mhm.
what is really being offered is flight hours, for one, and in your logbook, those look the same regardless
Right.
of which flight school you go to. And also, you are offering the ability of students to be able to pass a standardized test,
Right.
essentially. So there's an objective sense in which you could say that all flight schools are really offering the same thing.
Right.
But that being said, we all know from personal experience that when we go to different flight schools, we have much different experiences. And so that's really what this is all about, and how to enhance your value by focusing on those experiences that you're giving in a holistic way.
Okay. Well, obviously, I want to know more about this. So what's the
Sure.
next step here?
So if you go to the next slide, there are 5 modes that really constitute this kind of experiential sense. First, there is sense, and that encompasses all sensory experiences, things like sight, sound, smell.
Right.
And that can be anything from what a customer sees when they first walk through the door of your flight school to the smell of your aircraft. I mean, any of those sensory experiences, that's what that entails.
So this be kind of akin to like when somebody's selling a house, the cookie's cooking.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
And so maybe it's in a sense of minimum, make sure it doesn't smell bad, right?
But in the best sense, cookies. Yeah.
There you go. So yeah, do what you can. And in fact, I've run into schools, or I've been into flight schools where they will do that. They'll have cookies or popcorn or things like that. They give you that nice smell.
Right, right. It does really enhance the atmosphere. And it's one of those intangible things that people don't often think about,
Right.
but we all feel it. And then on that topic, feeling is next, and that is appeals to feelings and emotions. And man, this is a really important one. This is everything that a student feels throughout the whole flight training process. And again, it doesn't necessarily start when you enter the airplane. This starts when they enter your flight school.
Right.
Are you noticing them? Is someone talking to them? Are they friendly? This is where customer service really comes into play. And you could say that it begins before they even enter your flight school. I know when I first started flight training in Illinois, there were a couple schools in my city, and I didn't actually go to those different schools to evaluate them. I called them on the phone.
Right.
And their manner on the phone has really played a big role in
Sometimes that's enough to
who I
turn you
chose.
off, right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, sometimes it's just, are you calling back?
Right.
So that's a really important one. And then also the feel throughout flight training as well. And what's important here is to remember that you want to customize the experience to different students because they might want different things. I mean, if a student is on their way to the airlines, for example, they might be looking for a more professional feel.
Right.
Than a student that is maybe getting a light sport in a Cub and just wants to go out and have fun. I mean, then you want to be sure that you're generating that feeling of fun. That's something that the flight school that I initially went
Right.
to for my primary did really well. I had an instructor, and it was a very simple thing. But at the beginning of every flight, before we would taxi out, he always said, "All right, let's go have fun." And what that did is it really set the tone of what was going to come after. And it always kept that emphasis on the fact that the reason we're doing this is because it's fun.
Right. And it's those little things too. I know that I remember I heard you mention that. It was actually last night. We were working on something else, and I thought that was a really good point. So there's just little things you can do to think about what are the experience that I'm giving, and that doesn't cost anything. It's really just
Exactly.
focusing on what I'm trying to convey.
Exactly.
Right.
Another free thing that doesn't cost anything but can really enhance the feeling is celebrating wins.
Right.
If you have a student that has done a solo or gets a certificate, whatever your ceremony might be or however you celebrate that at your flight school, make sure that you do something because that can really enhance those feelings of accomplishment
Cool.
as students hit milestones.
I'm curious for this next one. What's this think thing? How do you do that?
Yeah, think, as it says on the slide, appeals to the intellect. Thinking is all about problem solving and making that a satisfying experience. So just to give an example here, I guess as far as thinking is concerned, as you go up with students and are teaching them different maneuvers,
Mhm.
are you just teaching them exactly as they exist on the page of the FAA textbooks?
Right.
Or are you actually introducing scenarios? Are you making it more cognitively satisfying? I guess is how I would put it. And like I said, an example of that would be when I got my commercial certificate in a helicopter. My instructor did a lot of scenario-based training where instead of going up and doing maneuvers, he would instead play the role of, say, a photographer for a flight that wanted me to go up and get some pictures of a house.
Right.
So he'd go up, make different requests so he could get different shots, some of which wouldn't have been safe. And so you learn the importance of saying no at certain times.
Right.
In other scenarios, he might be a businessman that needed to get to a meeting quickly, or we might be on an EMS flight, and so there'd be a crash in a certain location, and it'd be up to me to find a good landing zone. So it's things like that, introducing fun kinds of problem solving that make for a much more satisfying experience than if you're just going up and having students do, now slow flight, now a stall.
That's interesting, and I think that's potentially a future episode, getting into some of the types of things, letting people experiment. Because I'm actually taking some training right now to coach my son's lacrosse team, and
Oh, yeah.
in that they talked about the exact thing. Rather than telling them what to do right away, provide opportunities to say, "Here's a challenge, see what you can do," and let them try to figure a little bit of it out, and then provide instruction to guide them along instead.
And by doing that, you're also teaching good aeronautical decision
Exactly.
making, because you're giving them the context in which they might actually need these
Yeah.
things and creating those associations down the
Yeah,
line.
this could be a fun one for later. I think we might expand on that one. Okay, what's this next one? The ACT.
Sure.
What is this one?
ACT really just refers to all the behaviors that you're building, and also teaching people alternative ways of doing things. So another this would be another juncture where I would just emphasize the importance of customizing the experience. So if you have a student that their intent is to get to the airlines as fast as possible,
Right.
maybe try to replicate some of those procedures
Mhm.
and get them in that kind of habit early
Right.
on. Whereas if you have a student that only intends to maybe get a light sport or get their private just to have fun, then make those kinds of scenarios the normal ones that you would do, so that they're starting out by having fun and flying the kinds of trips that they would fly once they get their certificate.
I like it. I like it. Good.
And then finally, relate. And that is all about relation to others and being able to link with others. So uh, this is another thing that my first flight school, I feel like, did really well. When I think back on my flight training experience, I don't just think about the flight lessons that I had. I think about some of the events that the school would host, and those events offered ways for all of us to get together.
Right.
I mean, it would be as simple as a pizza party where we would all go, give the students a chance to talk, share stories, and that really enhanced the overall training experience, even though it didn't have anything to do with the training itself. It was completely a side thing. But that gets back to not focusing too much on the cup of coffee, but on the overall experience.
Exactly. And that's almost creating a community, it sounds like. And that community makes you feel welcome and warm. And it actually, I would think that that builds into a lot of these other ones. The idea of feel and emotions and knowing that you belong, that's something that we all tend to like and
Exactly.
support one another, right? So,
And it,
yeah.
it goes back to some of those things that we talked about in the last episode,
Right.
dealing with Maslow's hierarchy. Exactly.
Perfect. All right. So this is really good. So the main idea I'm getting out of this then is that take these when you're creating that customer experience and you're trying to differentiate what it is that you are offering, creating that extra value.
Yes.
These are the things that have been found that are really effective to focus on.
Exactly. This is a good framework or a checklist, if you will.
Right.
So that as
like
you
our
think
checklist.
about the experience that you're providing customers, just think of it in terms of these 5 things and what your school is offering in each of these areas, so that you're approaching experience in a holistic way.
Awesome. All right, Michael. Well, thanks. I think that's a good bit to think about, and I hope that
Thank
you
you.
guys find that useful. Appreciate you being here.
Glad to be
And
here.
for you folks out there, please tell us if you've got any ideas or things that you'd like to request. Just let us know. You can email us at ftinitiative@aopa.org. You can even throw it in the comments below this video. And we're here to support you. So thanks for joining us, and thank you, Michael. Thank you, Stephen. And we'll go ahead and say goodbye this time. Thanks.
Thank you.